Hi everyone. So we have just come from the motion for judgment on the pleadings video. I'm going straight into the motion for summary judgment. If you haven't seen the motion for judgment on the pleadings, it is I do give quite some strong opinions at the end, and it did have me outraged at various points, as usual. But we're going to go into this. Now, the motion for judgment on the pleadings videos was an hour and a half long, and that was 20 something pages. Well, it was 35 pages all in all, but what I actually read, because we cut out the indexes and various things, it was about 25 pages. This is considerably longer. This is a 60-page document by the time you cut out all the various stuff that's not worth reading. So this video is not going to be a short video. I will just kind of skip over legal standards and case citations, though, because I'll just focus on stuff that's relevant specifically to Wayfarer. Try and keep the video as short as possible. Okay. Yeah, so the other one, the motion for judgment on pleadings, her response did have me outraged at points. I'm expecting that here, just to give you a heads up. All right, introduction. In their latest effort to avoid accountability. Okay, we're starting. We're hitting the ground running. In their latest effort to avoid accountability for the hostile environment they created during the production and marketing of It Ends With Us, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sowers, and their co-defendants asked this court to shield them from trial and deny Blake Lively her day in court by throwing the kitchen sink at Lively's sexual harassment and retaliation claims. Oh my god. Oh my god. Wow. Well, okay. Shield them from trial. I don't think that's what they were doing. And if she feels like that, then why did she file a motion to dismiss, against Wayfarer's claims and not give them their day in court? That sounds conspicuously like there's a few headlines going around when Justin Baldoni when Wayfarer filed the motion for judgment on the pleadings or the summary judgment. There were a few news headlines going around saying, well, they're trying to get out of going to court. So that line sounds conspicuously like those headlines. The defendant's scattershot theories collapse under the weight of the overwhelming evidence in documents and testimony from witness after witness that Baldoni and Heath redacted, which they got away with redacted. Yeah, overwhelming evidence, but she needs spoliation sanctions because they ruined her chances of proving her claims. This is not, as defendant claims, a story of minor annoyances fueled by creative differences. I'm just going to make this larger. But instead one of a toxic environment in which, redacted, that Sony's representative remarked, redacted. Numerous women have written or testified about feeling redacted, and redacted. Described Baldoni and Heath's behaviour as redacted and wanted redacted with Baldoni and Heath by the time the films premiered. What? I mean, even with I know it says redacted, like all of the buzzwords are redacted, but I feel like they're PR lines. Betraying their redacted brand, Baldoni and Heath refused to listen to what numerous women told them. Instead, their conduct and their entire defense has deployed a redacted of deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender, DARVO, according to Dr. Jennifer Freud, who coined the term and submitted an expert report supporting Lively in this case. So their expert is the person who made up the DARVO acronym. Okay. Defendants created a hostile environment. When confronted with complaints, they abandoned Wayfarer's policies by refusing to investigate the concerns because he thought it would be better redacted. Defendants buried these concerns even though, and in fact because, Baldoni fully understood that by November of 2023 that Lively's written complaints redacted. Yet, rather than attempting to clear their names with an investigation, defendants went on the attack, claiming they are the victims of a bully who fabricated complaints to take over the movie, ignoring the irony that this purportedly hijacked film enriched the Wayfarer defendants by smashing all box office expectations. That's not the same. That's not the point. She did not know that the film was going to exceed expectations for a start. But and that's something that happens, films do that. But also, that still doesn't mean that she didn't make false claims to try and take over the movie. And if it weren't to take over this movie, it was sure as hell, in my opinion, to take over the sequel. The Wayfarer defendants have peddled their victimization narrative since the spring of 2023, including in response to Lively's concerns during production and then in reaction to her efforts to remediate her concerns. In August 2024, they relied on background conversations and leaks to friendly journalists, a covert strategy that departed from the redacted and redacted, in Heath's words at the time, marketing plan being followed by the rest of the cast, and then seeding, amplifying, and boosting negative content targeting Lively and her family. Defendants repeat their mantra that the instantaneous avalanche of online attacks against Lively and the other women associated with the film was somehow an organic backlash to Lively, hoping to conceal the fact that their untraceable social manipulation campaign was designed to appear organic. Well, how come the other women of the film did not receive the same organic backlash? I mean, people don't like Blake Lively. There was backlash just upon the announcement that she'd been cast in the role. Defendants have never explained, nor could they, how Lively's redacted, as Wayfarer initially described it in their own words, organically created from the same marketing plan that had delivered extraordinary box office success, right? So she's framing this as, hire me because I'm amazing. And look what I did for this film. The defendants' litigation strategy has parroted their inversion of victim and offender. Defendants filed a frivolous lawsuit, now dismissed, and their lawyer supercharged the Wayfarer defendants' narratives through friendly journalists and content creators. She has not proven that content creators had anything to do with any of this at all. And all but one subpoena was withdrawn by her at the slightest challenge. Aside from Popcorn Planet, all subpoenas that she issued to content creators, she withdrew and got nothing. And she has not proved this claim, and it pisses me off because I was one of those content creators that was subpoenaed. And by laundering their DARVO strategy through this court's docket, but defendants campaign to transform Lively, a mother of four, mother of four, with decades of experience in the industry, who simply sought a safe and respectful workplace, into a bully who took over Baldoni's film is not a defense to harassment, retaliation, defamation, or any claim Lively has advanced. The record is clear. Lively's claims survive summary judgment and must be sent to a jury. The court should deny the motion for summary judgment in full. As a side note, when Lively says, well, I've got decades of experience, right? This is someone whose father got her into the lead role in a choir, despite the fact that she could not sing. Her parents were huge in the entertainment industry. She's a Nepo baby. That is where she has got her opportunities and experience. And again, and I don't love saying this, but a lot of people know her for being the wife of Ryan Reynolds. That is a fact. Like, you know, her own achievements have not really, they've not stood out. I'm not saying she doesn't have any, but the films are not big, huge films. They're not memorable films. They're not even good films. And, you know, her reputation, I mean, she had a company that was predicated on the antebellum period. So let's not start listing her achievements. Okay, background. So here we go. Baldoni and Wayfarer curated a misleading feminist brand. Alright, so it's not enough that we're going to come for him during his role on the film. We're going to go all the way back and destroy everything he stood for. In 2017, Baldoni launched the Man Enough brand, which he describes as a movement around healthy manhood and greater equity for all. Okay. In public commentary, Baldoni openly admitted to a history of mistreating women, estimating there is a 1,000,000% probability that there is a woman or two that he has in some way made uncomfortable by saying something or doing something that was chauvinistic or sexist, and that he did not always ask for consent or always listen when they said no. Baldoni promised to shut the hell up and listen to women, so that one day we don't have to live in a world where a woman has to risk everything and come forward to say the words, "Me too." Baldoni sought to monetize his feminist brand, that echoes nice pull, through Wayfarer, which he co-founded and co-chairs with billionaire Sarowitz, who is Wayfarer's financier and one of Baldoni's close friends, as is Heath, Wayfarer's CEO. Shortly after its launch, Wayfarer acquired the film rights to Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us, Colleen Hoover's novel It Ends With Us, the theme of which was female empowerment, including breaking the cycle of domestic violence. Hoover was reluctant to option the film to a man, but agreed to sell the rights to Wayfarer because she believed that Baldoni redacted. I didn't see any reluctance. I certainly didn't see reluctance based on the fact that he was a man. She seemed a bit reluctant because things had fallen through, or it wasn't, you know, like a previous deal had fallen through, or things weren't being represented in the way that her fans would approve. But nothing to do with the fact that Justin Baldoni was a man. Hoover explicitly requested that a woman direct the film. Where? She knew Justin Baldoni was the fucking She knew Justin Baldoni was the director, and she recommended that Baldoni be the lead male. Although Baldoni had directed only 2 small films, more than Blake Lively, Wayfarer decided that he would direct, executive produce, and be the film's lead male. No, he was always going to be the director. Executive producer is just a token credit. That's not the same as producer, which is something she also had that credit. before she then blackmailed them for the full PGA producer credit, which is something different and means something, and be the film's lead male actor. I've just said, and that the emails or texts are there. Colleen Hoover suggested him for the lead role. Oh, I'm annoyed already. Wayfarer appointed Heath, with even less experience, as lead producer and as president of It Ends With Us movie, the wholly owned entity that produced the film, and with Wayfarer employed all the cast and crew. But Heath did have experience. It sounds like she's just aggrieved with everyone now for anything. Heath oversaw Sachs, an experienced independent producer. Sony agreed to distribute and co-finance the film with Giannetti as its liaison, but Wayfarer would oversee and control all aspects of production. Right. Footnote. Wayfarer, It Ends With Us movie and Sony entered into the distribution agreement, which gave Sony the exclusive right to inter alia market and advertise the film, and subject to certain conditions, authorized the final cut of the film. Okay. All departments reported to Heath and Baldoni, who had the power to hire, fire, and discipline cast and crew. Heath and Baldoni reported to Sauerwitz. Baldoni, Heath, and Sauerwitz knew that they needed an A-list actress to headline the film to achieve the commercial success they desired. When Wayfarer learned of Lively's potential interest in late 2022, they put on a full court press to obtain her services. So she was interested in late 2022. She had interest in this before she actually got brought on. Noting Lively's redacted, Heath texted on December 9th, 2022. And then something's redacted. Hoover told Baldoni that redacted. Lively was interested. Baldoni and Lively met on December 14th, 2022, in what Baldoni described as redacted. In that meeting, Baldoni volunteered that his penis was circumcised, without Lively expressing any interest in the subject of Baldoni's genitalia. Oh, God's sake. Lively later spoke with Plank. I knew she was in this. I knew she was in this. Baldoni's longtime podcast host, this is Liz Plank, who is friends with Ryan Reynolds, and has done work with Ryan Reynolds, and her friendship with Ryan Reynolds actually predates her friendship with Justin Baldoni. And I have long speculated that she is the one who advised the Reynolds of this franchise that was coming up, and that between the three of them, they kind of plotted on how to screw over Justin Baldoni and take control of it all. Lively later spoke with Plank, Baldoni's longtime podcast host, who redacted of working with Baldoni, but indicated that he had worked on himself, so she was hopeful that Lively would not have issues. And it sounds like Liz Plank was so in that Baldoni was some kind of nightmare to work with. But it didn't stop her working with him, though. Lively was disturbed but assuaged by Baldoni's purported commitment to being a feminist devoted to combating toxic masculinity. Lively agreed to play Lily Bloom because she believed in the film's messages of female empowerment personally and professionally, and the importance of ending the cycle of abuse. No, you didn't. You said nothing about abuse, and you scoffed at it even. Baldoni aggressively leveraged Lively's fame and her 20-plus years of experience in the entertainment industry, and regularly solicited her feedback on many aspects of pre-production work, including but not limited to casting and hiring, wardrobe and makeup, set and design, and set design and decoration and the script. Oh my god, this is how she's reframing it all. No. I did not try to take over the film. He used my 20 plus experience. 20 plus experience of what? You haven't done anything that's notable. Baldoni gushed to Lively that she was a genuine collaborator and Redacted who made Redacted her and Redacted. Lively did not know that Baldoni privately resented collaborating with a prominent actress, arrogantly insisting behind her back in December 2022 that he had discovered Hoover's book, Redacted, could Redacted and intended to Redacted. I can't wait for this crap to be unsealed. Wayfarer policies redacted harassment, but its leaders disclaimed responsibility for creating a safe workplace on set. What? At times, Wayfarer had HR policies in place that applied to redacted and redacted, including redacted but any behavior redacted. Those policies and Wayfarer's training deck provided that redacted included conveying redacted. We have a footnote, amazingly, for all of that non-information. Wayfarer claims to have presented this deck to cast and crew, but has no record of who participated, and key cast and crew members dispute receiving it. The deck does not identify to whom concerns should be raised. All right, that's probably the number on the roll sheets. Wayfarer's policies encourage reporting of redacted and promised that redacted. Wayfarer's policies redacted. Baldoni and Heath testified that they understood and received training on these policies. Before production, Saks expressed redacted, but Wayfarer kept HR for itself and then failed to provide its policies to the cast and crew, make its HR consultant available, or provide guidance on reporting HR concerns. Heath believed that redacted. Right, well, this is probably not going to take as long as I thought because there's nothing to read. For her part, Saks understood that HR concerns should be raised to Heath as the signer of checks and agreements, even if the complaints pertained to Wayfarer, Heath, Baldoni, or Sauerwitz. In the end, the film's cast and crew did not know redacted. Wayfarer and Baldoni fostered a hostile work environment for women. Multiple women felt uncomfortable, marginalized, harassed, objectified, and disrespected by the environment Baldoni and Heath fostered in connection with the film. Baldoni and Heath marginalized and mistreated women based on gender. In February 2023, pre-production, Baldoni admitted in a lengthy note that redacted, but his misbehavior continued. Baldoni consistently yelled at Saks and exhibited rageful yelling or interrupting reactions when Saks spoke. Saks recounted one time, we're not going to redact this bit. Saks recounted one time when Baldoni upset with Saks's input on the film, came up behind where she was sitting and yelled, and then slammed his hands on the chair next to her and stormed away. Saks immediately warned Heath and Giannetti, seated behind her, that she would walk off the movie if Baldoni behaved that way again. As the only woman and non-Wayfarer producer on set, Saks felt sidelined by Baldoni and Heath, and she also observed Baldoni being very dismissive of the film's screenwriter, Hall, who he did not seem to respect as a female voice on the team, and on a movie like this, that felt especially bad. I mean, the evidence that's there suggests that it was Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds who disrespected Christy Hall, the female screenwriter, by rewriting her script. Hoover expressed redacted. Oh, love the footnote. These women's experiences echo that of Ayub, who worked on a separate Wayfarer film and described Baldoni as verbally abusive, banned him from set, and refused to appear in press events with him. Heath insisted on a meeting while Lively was undressed and gawked at her body. I thought he made eye contact. On the second day of filming, May 16, 2023, redacted. Heath redacted. Look at the footnote. Heath claims Lively invited him into the trailer, but admits Lively conditioned his entry on agreeing not to look at her. So hold on, because Lively says that, and in the deposition, her makeup artist say that they said no, don't come in when he knocked. But she's saying in this footnote here, Lively conditioned his entry on him agreeing not to look at her. So she did allow him in. Defendants suggest Lively was comfortable with the intrusion because Lively once texted Baldoni about running lines while she was pumping in her trailer. Lively did not say that she would pump while running lines, but regardless, Lively could conceal herself while pumping, which she could not do when Heath intruded. I think a lot of people have seen the image that she put up in the movie trailer around that time of her with a towel around her under her arms, which covered her up. She had a makeup artist and I think hair person there, and she put it on social media. Lively redacted. All three women redacted. Baker described redacted. Carol was so redacted. Baldoni sexualized and objectified women on set. During a rehearsal on May 23rd, 2023, redacted. When redacted, Lively redacted. Later that day, before shooting a bar scene in a different outfit, Baldoni redacted. When Lively redacted, Slate, who played Baldoni's sister in the film, redacted. Video footage confirms redacted. A few days later, Baldoni redacted. I hope that's all informative for you all. They don't tell me shit. On another occasion, Baldoni told Slate that redacted. Slate testified that redacted. Baldoni also redacted. At one point, Baldoni redacted. Later, redacted. The redacted. For fuck's sake. Again, another shameless plug. Please do check out my merch store. It's got some amazing t-shirts in there, which were suggested by Super Sarah. They actually say on there, I read all of Wayfarer's motion for summary judgment and all I got was redacted. So do check them out. Okay. Baldoni confessed a troubled history with sexual consent. During a car ride with Lively, her security detail, and her assistant in April 2023, Baldoni redacted. Echoing redacted. Baldoni redacted. As soon as redacted. Baldoni added gratuitous sexual content and spoke about his sex life. The ALA, that's the Actors Loan Out Agreement, redacted. Yet Baldoni added gratuitous sexual content without her knowledge or consent, such as redacted. Baldoni also redacted. We have a footnote. Defendants blame Giannetti for suggesting a more sexualized script, but even if true, that did not grant Baldoni the right to bypass Lively's approval rights or to use his personal sexual life as justification. But there's evidence that she used hers. And they weren't blaming Ange Giannetti. They literally provided the text or email. They provided the actual text where Sony are saying, can you get her to do more this? Because that's what the film needs, to stay true to the book. He is doing his job. But the fact that a woman is actually the one that's suggesting, look, we need more of an R-rated angle here. We need more hotter sex. That's coming from a woman. And that is being passed on to a man to pass on to another woman. Now, should the woman have asked the man to make that request? Probably not. There is a, but then again, this is a film. And if there's sex scenes, are we going to get into a situation where, is going to be called sexual harassment anytime a male director or producer asks a female actress or something. That's just stupid. But the fact that the original request came from a female representative of Sony, who, and she is a big deal, by the way. She is not just, some side figure who could be bypassed. It's Sony. Does take away the fact, the suggestion that Baldoni did this to Lively because of her gender, because he was sexualizing her. No. That's just stupid. Sorry, I feel like I got to say something because I'm saying redacted so much, so I've got to say something. But I don't like the way that this footnote is being kind of. This feels very PR, and it's like they really don't care. Because the only thing that's not redacted really here is the headlines, which are sensationalized. Okay. Baldoni did not explain why redacted. Baldoni's motives for adding these scenes, including whether to create additional opportunities for intimacy with Lively, are disputed. When Lively challenged the additions, Baldoni redacted. Baldoni redacted. Baldoni redacted. Footnote. Baldoni similarly attempted to add gratuitous hypersexual content for Farah to perform, despite the fact that Farah portrayed an underage teenage girl. Okay, well, Farah herself was not an underage teenage girl, and also she's portraying the fact that a teenage girl who probably was underage was having sex. That happens. Teenagers do it a lot, but also that was written into the book. If Lively has an issue with these things, why is she not going to give Colleen Hoover shit? Baldoni was fixated with Lively's. Oh my God. Having given to her fourth. I'm now getting so annoyed I can't even get the words out. Having given birth to her fourth child shortly before accepting the role, redacted. If that says Blake Lively, that, Miss Lively had gained a few pounds, then I'm going to be pissed off that she's making such a fucking drama over this. Also, I have 5 kids. It is perfectly normal to gain some weight or have difficulty losing pregnancy weight after the kids. It happens. I don't think Baldoni had an issue with that. I think... While redacted, Baldoni undermined her confidence behind her back in invasive and humiliating ways. On or about April 24, 2023, and without Lively's consent, redacted. I admit he could have gone to Blake Lively himself. I think that would have been the better way of... I agree with Lively to the point where Wayfarer could learn some lessons and could handle things differently. I do not think it extends to anything deliberate, malicious, sexual, harassing at all. But are there things they could have done better and it's in a slightly more professional way? Yeah, sure. Actually, I do agree with that. Do I think it warrants all this lawsuit? No. Do I still think Blake Lively is an awful human being? Yes. Right. Redacted. On the first day of filming, redacted. Baldoni and Heath pressured Lively to perform unscripted nudity. Oh, joy. The birth scene did not call for the simulation of nudity, but on the day of filming, May 22nd, 2023, Baldoni redacted. Right, the birth scene video, not the birth in video, Jamie Heath's birth video, but behind the scene footage of the birth scene is actually part of Wayfarer's motion for summary judgment evidence. It is not on the docket though because it's too big. So it's one of the ones that it's sealed anyway, but it's not on the public docket. It's been distributed to the parties, but the public can't access it because the file is too big. I've seen declarations about all of that. And I've seen references to the exhibit. But it is there. And I said at the time when I was reading Wayfarer's motion for summary judgment, they would not have put that in if it was not going to actually be beneficial for them to do so. So it feels like, she's got this delay on the unsealing, but then she's managed to whip this out, which is just postulating all this crap, which is not undoubtedly going to garner some news headlines about what a piece of shit Baldoni is. Right? But when all of this stuff becomes public and unsealed, I think we're going to see that this is all lies. This is all misrepresentations. Notwithstanding SAG guidelines requiring actor consent to nudity prior to filming, redacted. She was not nude. To obtain those shots, redacted. During filming, redacted. Why didn't you just? Why is this redacted? I don't understand why all this is redacted. Oh, the footnote. Blast Steve Sarowitz, who was on set on the day of the birth scene, on the day later after it was already shot, not at the time of the birth scene, testified, while I might have technically been non-essential, I did invest 30 million and paid for her salary, or at least my share of it, as well as the other actors, and I consider that to be essential. Lively considers that not to be essential. She can send me a check. That's completely irrelevant to the birth scene. He was not there. And he was responding to the fact that Lively was portraying him to be like non-essential. The guy's financing a film. He can go and visit the set. He's allowed to visit the set. She had her husband on set for the entire second half of filming. Heath showed Lively a video of his wife naked without Lively's consent. Right, so now we need Lively's consent. It's not Heath's wife's consent. On May 23rd, 2023, the day after filming of the birth scene wrapped. Oh. Hold on a minute. It was a day after the filming of the actual birth scene. So they would have been probably filming. I don't know for sure, but they probably would have been filming that moment after the birth. Okay. I actually did a next post on this at the over the Jamie Heath request for sanctions, and this is it. So this is the birth video that Jamie Heath, the scene that he wanted for creative inspiration, and this is the scene that I think Lively is talking about. If it happened the day after the actual scene giving birth, then this could be the scene. And if you look, right, the creative inspiration, if I just flick back, right, that is what, to me, that's the actual scene that was in the film. That is what Heath meant by vision for the film, is that moment, the initial moment, intimate moment that new parents have with their child in the first moments of life. I mean, what's the issue here? Hold on. Sorry, I was having issues there with sharing the screen with sharing a different tab. So this is the scene that Jamie Heath showed for creative inspiration, and this is the scene from the film. This is what Jamie Heath was referring to when he wanted, when he had a creative vision. This is what I think Jamie Heath was referring to. So just to go back again, It's that kind of, where the parents are holding their newborn baby. And that scene actually, a scene similar to that actually did go into the film. So Lively is saying this video showing happened the day after the birth scene wrapped. Well, that kind of makes sense, and actually, for me, it backs up what Jamie Heath is saying, that he was showing a post-birth video for a post-birth creative vision. It's just my opinion. Okay. So then there's a footnote. Lively and Heath dispute what video he showed her. Of course they do. Heath insists the video was after birth. Oh, Lively. Even if that were true. So she's leaving room for error. That video still shows Heath seemingly nude, cradling his visibly nude wife from behind a tub. Okay, again, let's just go back. Is there anything particularly nude about this? I mean, yes, granted, it's a post-birth scene, but can we see anything that we shouldn't see here? I don't get this woman at all. She shows more flesh in some of the dresses she wears on red carpets, for God's sake. She's being utterly ridiculous here. Right, redacted and redacted. Baldoni improvised physical intimacy without Lively's consent. Also on May 23rd, 2023, Lively and Baldoni shot the dance scene. Redacted. As such, redacted. Behind-the-scenes footage, which defendants released to the press, captures Lively's visible discomfort, including her leaning and pulling away from Baldoni. No, repeatedly suggesting that their characters should just talk. Right? No. Lively's mannerisms, if you look, they are consistent with her generally. Right? She does this thing where she kind of leans away. Not from people, that's just her. It's like a baseline for her almost. Plus, the characters were supposed to be teasing a kiss, where they were supposed to kind of come close to it, but not kiss. As for her talking, she was told to shut up. Not literally, but she was asked. It was supposed to be a silent montage. Her talking was just waffle. Abel, Baldoni's longtime publicist, described the dance scene as so gross and cringy, and speculated that it would prompt Lively to file a cease and desist against the pompous and unlikable Baldoni. I don't think she described the dance scene as that. We don't know if she actually saw the dance scene. What? Lively used redacted, another time redacted. Lively and other women repeatedly reported concerns about Baldoni and Heath, which Wayfarer failed to investigate. Lively and others voiced redacted. When redacted, in a contemporaneous text, Lively redacted. The same day that Heath showed Lively the naked video of his wife, which was not naked, among other settling incidences, redacted. Lively continued redacted. On May 26, 2023, Lively redacted, Lively redacted, Lively told redacted. Slate redacted around the same time. Well, now everyone's just redacting. On May 27th, 2023, Slate redacted. Slate separately redacted. Sachs immediately texted at Giannetti that we have real issues and need to replace our director and restrict Heath's access to set. Sachs escalated Slate's concerns directly to Baldoni and Heath, repeatedly encouraging them to investigate because she wanted it to be taken seriously and to create a more comfortable work environment for everyone going forward. And to be honest, this is now starting to sound like, I don't know if those texts exist. We have not seen them yet. We have also seen text from Alex Sachs expressing concern to Justin Baldoni and or Jamie Heath about Blake Lively taking over the film and rewriting the script. So even if they exist, it sounds like everyone's just playing off everyone's and being agreeable to everyone. But I have not seen those texts. If they exist, let's see them. Wayfarer did not investigate the complaints. Instead, Heath decided redacted, Baldoni redacted, and Sauritz redacted. Instead, Sauritz suggested that redacted. To Lively's surprise, redacted, although Lively redacted. Baldoni testified that redacted. Wayfarer's refusal to investigate the complaints redacted. Redacted. Sachs responded that redacted. Before Phase 2, Lively negotiated protections that Wayfarer agreed were reasonable and again reported her concerns. I didn't see that as a... I didn't see it as re-reporting her concerns. I mean, okay. In October 2023, Lively redacted. Slate responded that redacted. Lively decided that she could not, nor expect others to, return to a hostile environment. Thus, on November 9th, 2023, Lively, through her attorneys, sent Wayfarer a document entitled Protections for Return to Production, which requested Wayfarer agree to implement 17 protections to ensure a safe set going forward. The CRA required, inter alia, the presence of an intimacy coordinator when Lively was on set. Restricted set access during intimacy and other exposing scenes, prohibited spontaneous improvisation of intimacy, touching, or nudity, comments about Lively's body or appearance, discussion of personal sexual experiences, or intrusion into Lively's trailer while she is undressed. It also expressly addressed retaliation. And then she adds in point 17. No, I don't know if it's point 17. There should be no retaliation, blah, blah, blah. You cannot even change your facial expression. There's a footnote here. Sachs was present for the meeting. That's where is that? So Sachs was, all right, you can't see what meeting it's because it's all redacted. Sachs was present for this meeting and described it in detail to Giannetti, expressing admiration for Lively's professionalism and frustration at Baldoni and Heath's failure to take responsibility for their behaviour. Okay. I'd love to hear from Alex Sachs, I think, at this point, and Giannetti. Further, it mandated an all-hands meeting before filming resumed. Baldoni and Heath redacted. Notwithstanding the private nature of the communication, Baldoni and Heath redacted. On November 12, 2023, Baldoni redacted. But Baldoni redacted, despite redacted, and executed a contractual rider adopting them. The CRA. Okay. On January 4th, 2024, Baldoni redacted. That same day, Baldoni, Heath, Giannetti, Sachs, and others attended the all-hands meeting referred to in the 17 protections, during which Lively identified multiple behaviours, reading from her 30-point list on her phone, including discussions of personal experiences with sex and times that physical consent was not given in sexual acts, improvising of kissing, biting or sucking of lip, and intimate conversations out of character. There's no reference there so far to Ryan Reynolds having a 6-hour rant because, every HR meeting in the workplace has the employee's husband there screaming at her employer for 6 hours. The next day, Baldoni redacted. Sony exercised its right to edit its own version of the film with Lively's help. Of course it was with Lively's help. Production of the film resumed from January 5th, 2024 until February 9th, 2024, when post-production work began. The distribution agreement provided Sony the right, redacted, During negotiations, Sony redacted. During the strikes, Lively received a redacted. Lively worried that redacted. Accordingly, with Sony's support, engagement, and facilitation, Lively redacted. Greenstein, the then president of Sony's Motion Picture Group, explained that redacted. Lively redacted. Unlike Baldoni, Lively redacted. Wayfarer and Baldoni redacted. Baldoni redacted. Sony redacted. As the individual redacted. In June of 2024, an audience screened redacted. Thereafter, both Sony and Wayfarer redacted. Okay. Sony and Wayfarer developed a plan to market the film as a story of female empowerment, which Lively and the cast follow and support. Sony and Wayfarer collaboratively developed the film's marketing, publicity, and promotion strategy. In January 2023, before shooting had begun, Wayfarer redacted. Sony's redacted. Sony redacted. Wayfarer in turn redacted. Baldoni was redacted. Leading up to the premiere of the film, Baldoni redacted. The Wayfarer defendants responded by disparaging and discrediting Lively. Despite admitting that Lively's feelings about her experiences were genuine, Baldoni's fear that his on-set behavior may be exposed led him immediately to retaliate. He recast the complaints as misunderstandings, portrayed himself as the victim, and began an unyielding campaign to assassinate Lively's character. For example, on December 30th, 2023, Baldoni redacted. On April 27th, 2024, Baldoni redacted. Baldoni's redacted. Baldoni said redacted. Baldoni's behavior redacted. Baldoni redacted. He redacted. In truth, the redacted who were talking about and disparaging Lively were Heath and Baldoni. During a dinner with Hoover and her friend in Los Angeles on May 6, 2024, following the successful trailer launch event, Baldoni and Heath redacted. They were having a conversation with someone they thought was their friend, and they were expressing concerns they had, their view of problems with Lively on set. That was not a smear campaign, for God's sake. They redacted. Heath and Baldoni redacted rather than dispute Lively's qualification, redacted. The Wayfarer defendants hired crisis experts to bury Lively by discrediting her claims and assassinating her character. The Wayfarer defendants planned to go on the offensive from the outset. On May 17, 2024, months before the film's scheduled premiere, Baldoni redacted. 5 days later, Baldoni again asked, redacted. On June 17, 2024, 2 days after Lively, Hoover, and other cast appeared at Book Bonanza without Baldoni, he and Abel redacted. Abel redacted. The same day, Wayfarer redacted. Around the same time, Sony learned that redacted as Baldoni. In mid-June 2024, Sachs, who herself did not want to be pictured with Baldoni or Heath, conveyed to Sony that Hall, the screenwriter who Lively has never met, won't do press with Justin, doesn't even want to be on the red carpet with him. Hoover redacted, Slate redacted, Farrer redacted. By June 2024, Abel learned redacted, rather than truthfully redacted, and redacted. As the defendants were planning an offensive move for Baldoni, the film's marketing plan was eliciting an overwhelmingly positive public response. Okay. Sony, which was systematically tracking response to the film, redacted. I mean, I could wish that there weren't so many redactions. There's a lot this time. Greenstein, who bore ultimate responsibility for the film's marketing, redacted, which had begun months before and included wearing florals at promotional events, encouraging viewers to do the same. By July 22nd, 2025, Baldoni knew that, redacted. That same day, Lively told Sony that, redacted. By this time, Lively, redacted. Baldoni and Wayfarer hired a California-based crisis team to bury Lively. Approximately 2 weeks before the film's premiere, redacted. Abel, redacted. The same day, redacted. And again, I reminded you, I think in another video, I can't remember which one, they're now referring to Melissa Nathan as a California-based crisis team. In her second amended complaint, she referred to Nathan as being a New York resident. So that's how consistent Blake Lively is. On July 25th, 2024, redacted. Cases, redacted. According to cases, redacted. There was discussion, redacted. After the call, redacted. Abel did not wait for negative attacks. On July 31st, 2024, she texted Wayfarer about having seeded the weaponized feminism narrative with a write-up for People, Fox News, In Touch, and US Weekly, explaining she is fully briefed of the situation and is armed and ready to take the story of Blake weaponizing feminism to any of her outlets the minute we give her the green light. Abel did this notwithstanding, redacted. The next day, tag, redacted. A similar strategy of planting a seed earlier on to position your truth narrative, the ordeal in a subtle way appeared on the scenario planning document tag sent to Wayfarer, which set forth scenarios that we should be prepared for should Blake Lively and her team make her grievances public. Tag recommended that Wayfarer get ahead of this narrative with key messaging points, including when Blake Lively wasn't able to get her way on set or behind the scenes, she involved her husband to create an imbalance of power between her and Justin Baldoni. And I did say in the motion for judgment on the pleadings video I did earlier, I think that there's a lot of talk in that document about, how she falsely accuses Colleen Hoover of suggesting a female director when there is no evidence of that. I've not seen any evidence of that. If she's got it, great, I'll see it. But I have not seen it. And actually, Colleen Hoover knew fine well that Justin Baldoni was going to be the director. She falsely says that Colleen Hoover did not want to sell her book rights to a man. That's not true either. And she falsely says that Wayfarer wanted Justin Baldoni to be the male lead actor. That's not true, because we've seen the messages or emails between Colleen Hoover and Justin Baldoni, where Colleen Hoover suggests Justin Baldoni as the male lead. But there is a lot of talk about Justin Baldoni being the director, the executive producer, and the male lead, and he had too much power. And I did make the comment that that's no different to what Ryan Reynolds does. He is the male lead, he is the producer, and not just an executive producer, which is just a token, ceremonial title, which means not much. And Blake Lively also had that title before she went for the full carte blanche PGA producer. But also that Justin Baldoni, Ryan Reynolds is quite often he is the male lead. So I'm thinking of Deadpool here. The male lead, he's the producer, but also he has, his company, he's in charge of the company, he runs co-owns a company, Maximum Effort, who do the marketing and promotion, etc., and various things. So it is ridiculous. To me, I think I speculated, does Lively look at Justin Baldoni and kind of gets on the offensive almost, or defensive, but assumes that Justin Baldoni is going to be as insufferable as her husband probably is to live with. Maybe. Or is she just trying to take the control so she can be equivalent to her husband, an equal? I don't know. This is just some thoughts I had. But Blake Lively's less than favourable reputation in the industry spans decades and has been reported. There is a clear, likely motive due to the film's value and fan base in which Blake Lively is attempting to bully her way into buying the rights for It Starts With Us. And that's what I think happened. Because Blake Lively, in an interview, said that when she first heard about it and was told about the book, she saw it as a franchise opportunity. That was on a televised interview. Can't find it on the internet now anywhere. It is probably there. I just can't find it. But I know Anita used that interview in something she did. The scenario planning document, which suggested that the tag team can explore planting stories about the weaponization of feminism and how people in Blake Lively's circle, like Taylor Swift, have been accused of utilizing these tactics to bully into getting what they want. Baldoni found the scenario planning document to be insufficiently aggressive. He told Abel that he redacted. Abel conveyed that Baldoni wants to feel like Lively can be buried. Nathan explained, when we send over documents, we can't send over the work we will or could do because that could get us in a lot of trouble. We can't write that we will destroy her. Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. She observed that, we can bury anyone, but I can't write that to him. Nathan and Abel planned to redacted. Wayfarer engaged Tag on August 3rd, 2024. Nathan immediately got to work. Redacted. On August 4th, 2024. Tag, Nathan and Abel. Redacted. As the film's August 5th, 2024 press junket approached. Redacted. Baldoni's abrupt departure from the approved marketing strategy was not accidental. It was a strategy devised by Tag to get ahead of Lively's claims before they became public. Early on, December 5th, 2024, Abel reported that during his first interview of the junket, Baldoni redacted. The PR team redacted. Sony redacted. Sony was right. Within a week, dozens of articles had regurgitated redacted using the word friction in speculating about on-set tensions. Baldoni also redacted. As the film premiered with massive success, defendants launched a social combat plan against Lively. On August 5th, 2024, the day before the premiere, Nathan provided Heath with Redacted. The same day, Nathan redacted. The film premiered in New York on August 6th, 2024. At an after-party, Sarowitz redacted. At this point, Nathan and Abel were redacted. The day after the premiere, Nathan redacted. On August 7th, 2025, Tag redacted. The proposal outlined redacted as a footnote. These proposed services reflect Tag's understanding of Wallace's capabilities as reflected in similar scopes of work sent by Tag to other prospective clients. For example, Wallace has explained that he can improve an individual's image and reputation by rewriting an image's metadata, suppressing posts, links, and articles, heavily clipping and algorithm boosting, throwing a ton of upvotes at stuff that is rah-rah, and downvote everything that's acting as a draft, elevating content across all algorithmically driven platforms, and undoing years of suppression relating to a person's name. Street Relations and Tag work together frequently, including to enhance and expand redacted digital footprint and online presence, shape and advance and protect redacted reputation, amplify positive stories, and remove links that are hurting redacted, and build digital messaging to trend and dominate in redacted favor. Okay, so she didn't see the need to redact all of that. Tag redacted. By the time Wayfarer engaged Street on August 8th, 2024, Wallace redacted. That day, redacted. Also on August 8th, 2024, upon arriving in Chicago following the New York press junket and premiere, Baldoni decided to depart entirely from the film's agreed-upon marketing plan. Texting the Team JB social media group chat, redacted. The next day, Baldoni wrote that the redacted. Abel and Heath nonetheless redacted. The film was released into theatres on August 9th, 2024. The same day, Wayfarer redacted. Tag Nathan and Abel were also redacted. For example, redacted. Later on August 9th, Tag employees redacted. Later that day, Tag redacted. By that evening, Nathan and Abel celebrated that they redacted. The next afternoon, Tag reported redacted. During its first week, the film redacted. According to Sony, the film performed redacted. There was consensus redacted. Notwithstanding the film's success, Tag, Nathan, Abel, Wallace, and Street spent much of August 2024 working to disparage Lively's character and discredit any allegations that might arise about Baldoni's on-set behavior by boosting derogatory content about Lively alongside glowing content about Baldoni. Just a few examples include: on August 10th, redacted. On August 13th, redacted. On August 13th, Baldoni redacted. On August 14th, Tag redacted. On August 15th, redacted. On August 15th, redacted. On August 18th, Tag confirmed redacted. On August 18th, Baldoni redacted. Nathan redacted. Tellingly redacted. It tells me nothing. In the weeks after the film's release, redacted. On August 13th, redacted, as compared to only 4% pro-Lively, including because redacted. I think it sounds like she's reframing. My edits didn't do well because Baldoni was smearing me. But I think that's the reframe. It's like Leslie Sloan wrote this. Professor Aaron Coletta, who teaches computer science at Tulane University, redacted. Likewise, Dina Maislin, the Robert E. Brooker Chair in Marketing at the Marshall School of Management and the University of Southern California, concluded that the redacted. So these are expert opinions. Wayfarer will have their own experts. These trends suggest that the seeded, manipulated narratives fueled subsequent negativity first in August 2024 and again in the period spanning December 2024 through February 2025. During a phone conversation on August 9th, 2024, Sauritz admitted that the film had achieved massive financial success, yet his fear that Lively might speak out publicly prompted him to warn that he would protect Wayfarer like Israel protected itself from Hamas. Oh, for God's sake. There were 39,000 dead bodies. There will be 2 dead bodies when I'm done. The most overly mischaracterized statement I've ever heard in my life. The recording where he says this is a big nothing burger. It's just, honestly, I'm more threatening than this when when I'm raising a complaint at a restaurant because I'm not happy with my food. Yeah. So yeah, one thing I did learn from that Claire IU recording is that Steve Sarowitz is a big fluffy cuddly bear, not the least bit intimidating. Certainly not in the way that I'm sure he's a formidable businessman. I'm sure he can be firm and stern when it's required. Most successful people are. That is normal. What he is not, though, is such a psycho, egotistical maniac. He does not scream at someone for 6 hours. Ryan Reynolds. Or the other thing that's annoyed me about this is they keep having the same fucking arguments with Baldoni. Like in April 2025, April 25th, 2024, Ryan Reynolds screamed at Baldoni over the weight, asking about Lively's weight and all that crap then, right? When Taylor Swift and Hugh Jackman were in their house. And they're bringing it back up again, like 9 months later, 8 months later, and spend 6 hours. What is there still left to talk about for even 6 minutes, let alone 6 hours? Jesus. The very next day, Baldoni admitted in a text he knew Lively, redacted, notwithstanding that admission, redacted. In response to Lively's CRD complaint, defendants continued their retaliatory campaign with a baseless lawsuit and defamatory statements. On December 20th, 2024, Lively filed an administrative complaint with the California Civil Rights Department alleging inter alia harassment and retaliation. The same day, Lively redacted. Friedman also published the December 21 statement to the New York Times on behalf of his clients, calling Lively's claims completely false, outrageous, and intentional salacious, and a desperate attempt to fix her negative reputation, which was garnered from her own remarks and actions during the campaign for the film. Friedman stated that the representatives of Wayfarer Studios still did nothing proactive nor retaliated, and only responded to incoming media inquiries, and that there were no proactive measures taken with media or otherwise. On December 23, 2024, redacted. On December 31st, 2024, Friedman filed the California state lawsuit against the New York Times in state court in Los Angeles, California, on behalf of certain of his clients, alleging that an article on the CRD complaint defamed them under California law. Lively initiated this litigation earlier that same day. On January 2nd, 2025, redacted. The next day, redacted. Sarowitz, redacted. After defendant's approval, redacted. On 7th of January, Friedman was interviewed from his Los Angeles office by another former client, Megyn Kelly, during which he made the January 7th statement, which falsely accused Lively of making threats in order to be in control of marketing of the movie, and of using these allegations of sexual harassment, and she used these allegations of bullying to try and leverage her position so she could be the de facto director. I mean, they weren't wrong, though. Megyn Kelly, someone else, another person who was subpoenaed by Lively, had the subpoena withdrawn. No information was ever shared or provided by Megyn Kelly. Wayfarer, Baldoni, Heath, It Ends With Us movie, Abel and Nathan filed a separate lawsuit in this court on January 16, 2025 against inter alia, Lively and Reynolds, seeking at least $400 million in damages. Redacted. In the January 18th statement to Deadline, Friedman described Lively's sexual harassment allegations as heinous and revoltingly false, accusing her of attempting to publicly destroy Baldoni's reputation in an attempt to devastate his future career, and claiming that Baldoni never once publicly attempted to call Lively out for her own many wrongdoings during filming. He kindly addressed all her concerns during filming in the correct manner. On January 21st, 2024, the defendants provided raw video footage of the dance scene, along with an approved statement to friendly media outlets and content creators, including to TMZ, the Daily Mail, and Popcorn Planet, which rewarded defendants with headlines falsely asserting that the video proved Lively had lied about being sexually harassed. That same day, Lively moved for a protective order pursuant to Rule 3.6 in response to Friedman's incessant character assassination. On January 23rd, 2025, Friedman moved for pro hoc Beach admission, which was signed and notarized in Los Angeles, California, indicating that he was located in California at that time, and stated that he primarily practices law in California. Despite that ask, which is not a gag order, Nathan provided a quote to People.com, attributed to sources close to Baldoni, that it is grossly unfair to impose a gag order because all Baldoni wants to do is release videos and text messages to prove the allegations are false. In the January 25 statement, Friedman falsely alleged to Page 6 that Lively is so petrified of the truth that she has moved to gag it. Well, it was a protective order. It's not technically a gag order, but they mean gag order in the sense of let's show the public what, the behind-the-scenes footage and text messages, like you did with the New York Times. And that Lively had filed her litigation with the sole intent to ruin the lives of innocent individuals, and then went the extra mile to place blame on a fictitious smear campaign, all because she quite simply could not accept that the public had organically seen through her facade. On January 31st, 2025, the defendants filed the First Amendment complaint alongside a rambling 168-page timeline detailing Wayfarer Party's version of events. Now, I did not find that rambling. I found that actually one of the biggest helps to do sleuthing. Thank you, Wayfarer, for that. And I know a lot of content creators who have nothing to do with the smear campaign, by the way, just found it useful to go through it. On February 1st, 2025, the defendants launched a website with the URL www.thelawsuitinfo.com, which contained the First Amendment complaint and the timeline. On June 9th, 2025, the court dismissed the defendants' lawsuit. There's a footnote here which is heavily redacted. At this point, Friedman was also personally involved in attempting to kill stories that were unfavorable to his clients, including and then it's redacted. Lively suffered damages as a result of the conduct. Following the success of the film, Lively was on track to command what? Command It Starts With Us? Anyway, it's redacted. Instead, Lively suffered redacted. The income Lively redacted. But they redacted. Despite their prior successes, the sales are both redacted. Well, they were initially a success, and then people tried them and didn't like them. And there are so many like YouTubers, like hairdressers and things, hair specialists who tried Lively's hair care range and did not like it. I have never tried it, but I take issue with the fact that it does not have a conditioner. What is her problem? Like, add a conditioner. Otherwise, don't call it a hair care range. Okay. Argument. Where are we now? Page 47 of 72. Between the motion for summary judgment and motion for judgment on the pleadings, defendants present a kitchen sink of meritless arguments to attack Lively's claims. To avoid duplication, Lively addresses the threshold issues of administrative exhaustion, extraterritoriality, joint employer liability, the opinion and privilege defamation defenses, and the challenged sufficiency of the pleadings in the motion for judgment on pleadings opposition, which is incorporated herein by reference. This opposition addresses the substantive evidentiary disputes and governing legal principles that preclude summary judgment on Lively's sexual harassment retaliation, failure to prevent, aiding and abetting, employee status, contract, defamation, false light, conspiracy, and damages claims, as set forth in sections 1 to X below, and are likewise I to X, and are likewise incorporated by reference to the motion for judgment on pleadings opposition. Footnote: by defining Lively's claims and arguing against summary judgment on a claim-by-claim basis, this opposition does not limit the application of any arguments that are applicable to multiple claims. Oh, I have now been talking for 2.5 hours. I feel like I've got lockjaw. Right, okay. Lively sexual harassment claims must proceed to trial. Sexual harassment can be verbal, physical, or visual, and includes, without limitation, inappropriate comments, touching, and other conduct that communicates a demeaning message. I'm not going to go through too much of this because we have covered this. We know what the standard is for sexual harassment. Okay. Yeah, okay. The totality of the circumstances here necessitate denying the motion for summary judgment as to the harassment claims because the Wayfarer defendants have failed to meet their burden, and the evidence demonstrates that they subjected Lively to 1. Unwelcome conduct, 2. Because of gender that was 3. Sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the conditions of her employment. Right. My view. I do think, okay, Lively may well have found the conduct to be unwelcome. However, she also participated in equally unwelcome conduct, right? But Wayfarer are just not complaining about it. 2, I dispute that it was because of gender. Wayfarer, really smart, actually. All the, the hugging that Lively said, well, they're only hugging me because I'm female. But then they included videos of them actively, Justin Baldoni actively, kind of blocking a hug attempt from Isabella Ferrer whilst, hugging men. And I really have issue with her suggestion that it was sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the conditions of her employment. Her conditions of employment improved. That is not something that happens in harassment cases. Like, unless you're using them to your advantage, right? So an extortion is you should not be benefiting from court of law if you have already benefited from them during, extortion, i.e., when she was taking control of the film, getting her way on decisions, getting her cut, having the main premiere whilst, Wayfarer had to sit in a basement. No. And there was nothing, I've seen nothing so far that would be sufficiently severe or pervasive. There was only a couple of days of, so it wasn't ongoing for months, weeks, or years, and there's nothing severe. I am seeing nothing severe at all compared to what women often have to go through. This is not severe. Heath's behaviour alone warrants denying the motion for summary judgment. Are you kidding me? Heath's intrusion into Lively's hair and makeup trailer, which, don't forget, she did kind of say, well, we didn't actually say you could come in. But no, there was that footnote above where she says, well, it's admitted that he was allowed in, but on condition he did not look at her. He didn't intrude. Heath's intrusion into Lively's hair and makeup trailer and choice to show her a nude video at work after filming of the birth scene had already concluded, each alone give rise to a triable issue on harassment that precludes summary judgment. Any reasonable woman in Lively's position would be offended by having a supervisor look at her exposed breast. They were not exposed. Or play a video of his admittedly naked wife in the park. I'm a reasonable woman. No, I'm not offended. I would not be offended if this happened as, as the evidence shows it happens, not as Wayfarer tell the story, not as Lively tells the story, but as the evidence itself seems to support, I would not be offended, and I consider myself a reasonable woman, far more reasonable than Blake Lively. These experiences were degrading and humiliating in the extreme. No, they weren't. Redacted and ignores that Heath was Lively's boss. Heath's claim, I'm sure Lively ignored the fact that Heath was her boss. Heath's claim that Redacted not only is irrelevant, but also betrays ignorance about Redacted. The Wayfarer dependents fostered an environment laden with gender bias. The totality of the circumstances, subjective and objective assessed, demonstrate that the Wayfarer dependents fostered a hostile environment based on sex. I'm not going over that at all, because that's not true. Multiple women: Lively, Slate, Sachs, Farah, Hoover, and Hall. Right, so now we've got all the women, the names now. Redacted. The Wayfarer defendants did not deny that the majority of the harassing incidents occurred, but redacted. Oh, we got we got this footnote. We got to look at these two footnotes. 1. It is indisputable that the behaviour was unwelcome and that Lively genuinely perceived the workplace to be infected by gender-based bias and hostility. Defendants' own texts support that finding, as do Lively's contemporaneous texts and notes, testimony, and repeated reporting. That Lively described her own character's boots or beanie as sexy or dialogue as flirty and yummy does not indicate either comfort with or consent to Baldoni using those words to describe her body. He did not describe her. He did not describe her fucking body. He was talking about the same items of clothing, her character's wardrobe. Nor does agreeing to act in a romantic drama indicate her consent to discuss personal sexual fantasies, her sex life, or pornography. And yet you did. An unsupported and undisputed allegation that Lively improvised kissing, she did not. Yes, she did. We've seen the video. Does not establish that she consented to Baldoni's improvisation or found it appropriate. Right, well, I've not seen evidence of Baldoni improvising kisses or anything, but we have absolutely seen actually more than one video. I've seen one of her improvising kisses, unscripted kisses, the hospital scene, and we have seen her doing a lip biting sequence as well, which was improvised. That's just dishonest, that is now. Harassing conduct can occur outside the workplace, which makes it irrelevant. For example, Baldoni asked Lively's trainer, rather than Lively herself, also Baldoni's trainer, by the way, about her weight, and that he did so outside the presence of cast and crew. Fuck's sake. These characterizations did not excuse Wayfarer defendants' fostering of a hostile work environment. Right. Baldoni directed his personal sexual comments at Lively directly, including by redacted. And redacted. Wayfarer's own policy recognized that redacted. The nature of the film's material is no excuse. Baldoni's redacted cannot reasonably attributed solely to advancing any plotline. The nature of the film also could not possibly explain redacted, nor does it explain the Wayfarer defendants redacted, including those who shared no intimate scenes with Baldoni in the film. Baldoni and Heath's behaviour would be offensive and marginalising to any reasonable woman, and was to many other women on the set. Redacted. Do you know, like Isabella Ferrer, at the time, she actually worked with Baldoni. She was fine. She was happy. She sent a text saying it was a safe environment to work on. It was only after meeting Lively that she changed her tune. Just one example. Lively may be a movie star or the wife of a movie star, but on the set of... I take issue with the definition of the word star, which is being used in its broadest sense here. But on the set of the film, Heath and Baldoni were her bosses with a total consolidation of power as lead actor, producer, director, co-chairman, president, and CEO. I don't disagree, but the perception of those titles together does look like power. However, the text messages show that they had no power whatsoever. They set her schedule and her salary. Right. They set her schedule and salary, appeared on and managed the set every day, and was responsible for receiving and addressing HR concerns, and had the power to exert influence over Lively's working conditions. That is not true. I've already covered that. 4 Ways to Sunday. She had say over everything, including Baldoni being a director and Baldoni's own stunt and body doubles. The airplanes, they provided her. The cars, they provided her. The hotels, they put her in. Even the shooting location, all of it changed. It was supposed to be in Boston. It was changed to New Jersey to accommodate Blake Lively. Please do not tell me that they had control over her working conditions and her schedule. I mean, yeah, okay, they asked her to turn up on set on certain days because they'd arranged everything. You have to go through permits. A lot goes into setting up a day's shoot, a huge amount, actually. But, so, they merely asked her to just turn up on a given day and do her job, which for the money she got is the least she could have done. But she also took a lot of days sick whilst being well enough to go to Taylor Swift concerts. She also refused to turn up for work because she decided to go to London to be with her husband because they have some weird attachment issue with each other where they cannot be separated for a moment. If so, if people who don't follow this case, who have not been following this case as forensically as I have since the start, would not know this stuff, and they would just look at this, read it, and go, "Oh my god, that sounds awful." And it's only because I have, and many other people, like other content creators, and many, obviously, people who follow us content creators, who listen to what we've said along the way, who followed this, in graphic detail, are able to look at this and see it for the bullshit it is. But this would be picked up by mainstream media, and, I can't wait to see the headlines. I can't. It's just so rage-provoking because this is not true. Heath and Baldoni also leveraged their close friendship to act with a certain degree of impunity and cover the other's misdeeds, such as redacted. Their close friend Saritz responded by suggesting redacted. Their collective power and conduct threatened Lively's and others' ability to do her job, including by risking her chemistry with her co-star, forcing her to spend significant time reporting and attempting to remedy their behaviours, and redacted. On that score, the retaliatory redacted and continual disparagement of Lively to others, among the other retaliatory behaviours, were part and parcel of the sexual harassment, extending it well beyond January 4, 2024, contrary to defendant's position that all was well and resolved by that time. I'm sorry, Blake Lively was the one that said all was well. Blake Lively is the one that's still bringing up shit, more than 8 months after the event. After you've already had about 3 conversations about it. Wayfarer and It Ends With Us movie are strictly liable for supervisory conduct. Because Baldoni and Heath served as Lively supervisors, Wayfarer and It Ends With Us are strictly liable for their misconduct. The Wayfarer defendant remediation argument fails because such a defence does not apply when, as here, the conduct involves supervisory conduct. Nor can they avail themselves of the Farragut defence because doing so requires an employer not only to have, but also enforce anti-harassment policies and complaint procedures, including by effecting corrective action. We got a footnote? I'm not reading the legal standards. Wayfarer failed to enforce its own policies, refused to investigate concerns when raised, and did not take any disciplinary action, not even admonishing Heath or Baldoni. Instead, they enabled the hostility to continue, including through the subsequent retaliation inflicted on Lively. Lively's persistent efforts to remediate the behaviour does not absolve Wayfarer and It Ends With Us movie of their obligations. The retaliation counts must proceed to trial. And that footnote just simply says that Wayfarer and It Ends With Us movie are liable as joint employers. The court's previous finding that the strength of the evidence in favour of a smear campaign, because the evidence in the CRD complaint sufficiently demonstrated that the Wayfarer parties did spread negative stories about Lively and did what they said they planned to do, alone warrants denying the motion for summary judgment. And everyone said this would come back to bite or help, and however you see it, but this would come back. Judge Lyman, in his dismissal of Wayfarer's complaint against Lively, he lent into facts. He assumed facts, like, well, Wayfarer did do what they said they were going to do. There is evidence of a smear campaign. It's supposed to be reading the four corners of Wayfarer's complaint in the light most favourable to them. But he did assume facts, which he should not have done. And this is, clearly where those facts are now being, thrown back in his face. Well, you said this. You agreed with me that they harassed me and, spread negative stories about me. You said that in your order. So, you've got to agree with it here and you've got to deny this. So I feel like it's tainted this lawsuit. Certainly has the potential to. The same results follows at this stage because the Wayfarer defendants have failed to adduce admissible evidence to demonstrate they had a legitimate reason for their conduct, which they must to dispel the presumption of retaliation under Title VII and FEHA. Once Lively makes a prima facie case that 1. She engaged in a protected activity, 2. She suffered an adverse employment action, and 3. A causal link exists between the two. Right, so the record easily establishes a prima facie case of retaliation. The Wayfarer defendants concede that Lively engaged in protected activities. While conceding that Lively has met the protected activity element of a prima facie case, they did not. The Wayfarer defendants attempt to undermine the causal link element by pointing to temporal proximity and intervening events that ignores the full scope of Lively's protected conduct, which includes redacted. Footnote, defendants had identified at least 3 protected acts which they do not dispute occurred or constitute actionable protected activities. Lively raising concerns in May 2023 and 2024 and negotiated in the CRA. Okay. And something's redacted May to June 2023, and something else was redacted January to June 2024, and something else redacted June to August 2024. And filing her CRD complaint and this action December 2024. Footnote. No, it's a legal footnote. The defendants cannot challenge these additional protected activities on reply, but even if they could, each event constitutes legally protected conduct that destroys the causal argument. The Wayfarer defendants subjected Lively to a continuous pattern of adverse actions. Courts liberally interpret anti-retaliation provisions to include the entire spectrum of employment actions and consider the totality of the circumstances and an employer's acts collectively rather than in isolation, because retaliation can manifest in a series of subtle yet damaging injuries. And I'm not going to read all of this. The motion for summary judgment does not confront Wayfarer defendants' continuous pattern of adverse actions, focusing instead on recharacterizing certain publicity efforts as reasonable defensive measures and relying on self-serving and disputed facts to assert the digital smear campaign never happened. The argument is legally erroneous and ignores contrary evidence, the pending spoliation motion, and expert testimony. There's a footnote here. The court must deny the motion for summary judgment on the retaliation claims because Lively is not only has presented substantial evidence demonstrating that the existence of a retaliatory digital campaign, but has also sought relief for the defendant's destruction of relevant ephemeral communications. Yes, that has not been granted. That's speculation. The Wayfarer defendants obstructed Lively's attempts to report and remediate workplace harassment. Okay. The Wayfarer defendants impeded Lively's ability to report unlawful conduct and to secure a safe and harassment-free work relationship by dismissing her concerns, attempting to justify their behaviour, becoming huffy or short and withdrawing, or making comments that undermined the importance of people feeling safe on set. Baldoni and Heath knew that others found their behaviour inappropriate, but redacted. Their redacted the Wayfarer defendants' effort to redacted. The Wayfarer defendants impugned Lively's reputation. Courts have long recognised that making disparaging or untrue comments or otherwise besmirching an employee's reputation can constitute adverse treatment, especially when future employment requires a wholesome reputation. The Wayfarer defendants redacted, which directly undermined Lively's ability to perform her job, including by jeopardizing her ability to promote the film alongside Hoover. Are you kidding? How did it do that? You ran off with Hoover to Texas for Book Bonanza, took a few members of the cast as well, stole the raw cut of the film and showed it, even though you were not authorized to do so. There's a footnote. That redacted is irrelevant. It says nothing about whether Heath and Baldoni disparaged her because of her having engaged in protected activities. They furthered the pattern of adverse acts against Lively, redacted despite her well-documented contributions to the film. Defendants publicly maligned Lively by planning and implementing a press and social media campaign to bury her. Baldoni departed from the film's agreed-upon marketing plan, despite knowing in real time that it would harm Lively and the other female cast and crew. Redacted. Okay. The defendants simultaneously placed and promoted negative media and social media narratives that falsely blamed Lively for the film's marketing plan and cast aspirations at her character. Defendants attempt to cast their campaign as a defensive measure or classic PR, ignores the law and the facts, including their prior agreement that negative behavior, including during publicity and promotional work, could be retaliatory. Defendants cite no evidence demonstrating that Lively indisputably started the publicity fight or that she launched an onslaught of vicious negative press against Baldoni. Instead, they rely on disputed events occurring after they set their plan in motion. 2 texts from Reynolds to WME, the Van Zandt lawsuit, oh, she's mentioned it herself, that's a first, and the New York Times reporting on Lively's CRD complaint. None of this can possibly explain the campaign defendants began to hatch and then started executing before the film premiered. The evidence that exists demonstrates that defendants have exceeded the bounds of reasonable defensive measures. They did not simply defend Wayfarer by, for example, having Baldoni or Heath give interviews to explain what they experienced on set or offer witnesses to speak to Baldoni and Heath's characters. Instead, they purposely, repeatedly, surreptitiously, and directly attacked Lively's character and reputation, including in ways that directly contradicted their own perception of Lively's redacted. An employer's right to defend itself does not authorize threats, intimidation, or efforts to publicly discredit employees who have raised harassment claims. The Wayfarer defendant's employer coordinated and funded smear campaign directed by the same executives Lively accused of harassment constitutes quintessential adverse conduct and DAVO. Defendants filed a baseless and retaliatory lawsuit. Defendants' frivolous and dismissed $400 million lawsuit launched with the purpose of suing Lively, her family, and anyone on her side into oblivion. Constitutes adverse action. A causal link connects Lively's protected acts to defendants' adverse conduct. Defendants have failed to undermine the causal link connecting Lively's repeated protected acts between April 2023 and December 2024 to their pattern of adverse treatment. Defendants' sole challenge to causation is a purported lack of temporal proximity, but temporal proximity is not the only way to infer retaliatory animus. Temporal proximity is unnecessary here because the record shows that Lively's protected acts are precisely what caused defendants to retaliate. Defendants' argument separately fails because it assumes that nothing happened after January 4th, 2024, which ignores Lively's intervening protecting acts and their ongoing pattern of public and private antagonism against her. Patreon. Defendants failed to produce admissible evidence of legitimate non-retaliatory reasons for their sustained course of retaliatory actions. Because Lively has shown a prima facie case, defendants must but cannot point to admissible evidence to support a legitimate reason for their sustained adverse treatment of Lively. Defendants' argument that they would have reacted to Lively's onslaught of negative press against them even if no concerns about their on-set behavior had ever been raised fails on multiple levels. The argument relies on Heath's disputed, foundationless, and self-serving testimony, which is contradicted by inadmissible evidence that redacted. The defendants' insistence that they needed to defend themselves against Lively's concerns overlooks that she made no public accusations until she filed the CRD complaint. The argument also fails by focusing on the publicity-related aspects of the retaliation campaign, while ignoring the other adverse actions against Lively. Finally, the Wayfarer defendants claim that they had legitimate reasons to act, as they did ignores the volume and severity of conduct and the fact that such conduct far exceeds any reasonable defence and was and is an unleashed fury of offence. Defendants wanted to bury Lively for speaking out against them. Even if defendants have met the second stage burden, the record contains evidence that defendants' articulated business reason to defend themselves was false, pretextual, or motivated at least in part by the plaintiff's protective activity. Failure to prevent count must proceed to trial. The Wayfarer defendants had an affirmative and mandatory duty to prevent harassment and retaliation and to take all reasonable steps necessary to do so, including a prompt, thorough, and impartial investigation, but failed to do so. Okay. Wayfarer and Ends With Us movie failed to, and it's redacted. Wayfarer and It Ends With Us movie insist that an investigation would not have made any difference because they executed the CRA, but Lively's insistence on a safe workplace does not absolve them of liability. Nor can they claim futility because an investigation would have substantiated Lively's allegations, resulted in remedial actions including discipline for Baldoni and Heath, or prevented defendants from launching their subsequent retaliation campaign. Lively was an employee under Title VII and California law. Defendants wrongly argue that Lively was an independent contractor rather than an employee for the purposes of counts 1, 2, and 5. Whether an individual is an employee entitled to Title VII's protections depends on a fact-specific analysis of 13 factors, known as the Reed factors. Control is the most important factor and is alone reason to deny summary judgment. Yes, Blake Lively had all the control. Lively's offer letter and the ALA are replete with terms that show defendants' right to control the manners and means of Lively's performance, requiring Lively to, and then it's redacted. She had so much control. Okay. The ALA gave It Ends With Us movie redacted. Defendants complain that Lively's A-list status precludes a finding of control, and being a star does make Lively something less of an employee. Defendants' argument that they had no control because of Lively's various contributions to the film also fails because It Ends With Us movie had ultimate say. Defendants' failure to meet the control test is dispositive, as failure to establish even one factor renders the exception inapplicable. Okay. Defendants concede that California's employee presumption, but claim that Lively is an independent contractor under the narrow business-to-business exception. That exception applies only if the Wayfarer defendants meet all 12 statutory criteria, which they do not cite, let alone discuss. To avoid a finding of employment status, defendants thus must meet California's more stringent ABC test, which requires establishing that Lively A was free from their control, B performs work outside their usual business, and C is customarily engaged in an independently established occupation or business. Defendants cannot meet their burden because they failed even to mention this test, but even if they did, they could meet it because Lively is an employee for the above reasons. Lively's contract claims must proceed to trial. The ALA and CRA are valid enforceable agreements. The ALA is a binding enforceable agreement. The court should reject the Wayfarer defendant's argument that the ALA was never validly formed and is unenforceable because defendants previously sought to enforce the ALA against Lively in their now dismissed lawsuit, which asserted a claim for breach of the covenant of good faith and fair dealing predicated on the ALA. Defendants relied expressly on the ALA, quoting verbatim from its terms, to oppose Lively's motion to dismiss to first amended complaint. It is elementary that a party cannot sue on a contract and at the same time repudiate its obligations under it. Defendants' prior existence at the ALA was a binding agreement. It stops them from argument otherwise now, and is a judicially noticeable admission that warrants granting Lively summary judgment on the ALA's enforceability. My face is hurting so much. Oh, God. The Wayfarer defendants also cannot maintain that their argument. The Wayfarer defendants also cannot maintain their argument that execution was a condition precedent, because under California law, a party to an agreement waives a condition precedent by expressing a desire and intent to go forward with a contract, notwithstanding the failure of the condition precedent. Setting aside the provisions they later breached, Wayfarer and the Ainsworth's movie performed the material terms of the ALA, including by paying the contingent compensation that it contemplated, rather than the amount specified in the offer letter. Had the Wayfarer defendants believed a condition precedent was unmet, they could have, but chose not to, withhold payment. They did not do that, and in fact, on May 3rd, 2024, redacted. Plus the plain language of the CRA, which Heath and Lively executed, contemplated, redacted. Defendants claim there was no meeting of the minds on the ALA, based on the conclusory assertion that no final agreement was ever reached, because there remained material terms that the parties were discussing in July 2024. Only 4 terms remained subject to discussion at that time, and they're redacted. Those terms were immaterial in practice because both parties performed the remainder of the ALA's terms even while continuing to discuss those terms. The CRA is a binding enforceable agreement. Defendants' argument that the CRA is unenforceable because its validity depended on the ALA fails because the ALA is an enforceable agreement. Separately, the CRA was an independent, fully executed agreement, and nothing on its face conditions its validity on the execution of the ALA, including the reference to additional terms that would be incorporated into the ALA. Defendants cannot explain why, if the CRA's enforceability depended upon the execution of the ALA, it was necessary to execute the CRA at all, much less in January 2024. The CRA, by its own terms, refers to an independent exchange of consideration, and Lively's suggestion to refer to the ALA was not a unilateral statement, but a change that Wayfarer accepted, which demonstrates a contemporary mutual understanding that the ALA was in effect and had been amended. While defendants contend that the CRA lacked consideration, neither California nor New York law would require new consideration since it modified an existing agreement. Regardless, there was consideration for the letter because a written instrument is presumptive evidence of a valid consideration which defendants do not rebut. The rule defendants cite that a promise to perform an existing legal duty cannot constitute consideration only applies where the duty is neither doubtful nor the subject of honest dispute. Lively's duty to continue was at least doubtful, because she possessed a right under the ALA, in a provision never subject to dispute, to terminate the agreement in the event that sexual harassment took place. Further, it is undisputed that Lively executed the protection rider as an alternative to pursuing a more formal HR process. But you did. And forbearance to assert a claim is valid consideration. Footnote, even if the ALA was not in effect at the time the CRA was executed, the mutual exchange of promises embodied in the CRA was sufficient consideration to support the agreement. Defendants' other arguments as to the breach of contract claims fail. Defendants wrongly claim they are entitled to summary judgment on Lively's breach of contract claims because she purportedly did not comply with the notice and cure provision. They cured any such breach, and Lively is not entitled to the damages she seeks. Defendants have waived the right to claim Lively's non-compliance because they failed to assert it as an affirmative defence, which must be pleaded and proved by the party in breach or on pain of waiver. Even without the waiver, Lively satisfied the notice and cure provision because Wayfarer defendants had written notice of their breach by December 31st, 2025, and Lively filed the first and second amended complaints outside the cure period, mooting the issue. As to the claim that defendants cured any breach after November 2023, they do not, because they cannot contend that they ever cured the breach of the anti-retaliation provision, much less before Lively's amendments were filed. Finally, defendants contend that Lively's contract damages are duplicative and exceed the ALA's limitation on consequential and special damages, but the same wrongful act may constitute both a breach of contract and an invasion of an interest protected by the law of torts, and Lively is entitled to seek damages on alternative and independent theories. For similar reasons, Lively's claimed damages for the breach of the CRA's anti-retaliation provision constitute general damages, not special damages. False light claim survives because California law applies. Defendants' contention that New York law applies to Lively's false light claim ignores that the ALA contains a choice of law provision that mandates application of California law to that claim. Even if it did not, California law would apply to the false light claim because it turns on defendants' conduct in California, including but not limited to the execution of a communication strategy from California that included blaming Lively for marketing for which Sony and Wayfarer, not Lively, was responsible, and distributing the dance scene footage to friendly outlets. Defendants claim that Lively lacks standing to bring a false light claim because she is not a California resident. But the authorities on which defendants rely are unpersuasive because they cannot be reconciled with Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution, which by its terms applies to all people. Just see how much longer this has. Okay. This is so exhausting. In any event, false light claims do not depend on the California Constitution because it is a common law tort, which makes cases limiting the reach of California's Constitution to residents inapplicable. And even where such constitutional privacy claims are squarely at issue, other cases have rejected the argument that such claims are unavailable to non-residents, instead applying ordinary choice of law analysis. The defamation claim must proceed to trial. The MSJ recycles a number of the arguments advanced in the MJP, including that defamatory statements are opinions. Let's look at the footnote. Defendants did not dispute that they asserted verifiably false facts in connection with the defamatory statements, including by asserting that Lively fabricated harassment claims as part of a ploy to take over the marketing of the film, an assertion which falsely pinned responsibility on Lively for a marketing plan that was approved by Wayfarer from the start. The only opinion defendants assert is that whether conduct amounted to sexual harassment or retaliation reflects an actionable opinion. I mean, she did have a say in the marketing. I mean, that stupid press junket with Brendan Scolnar, that wasn't Wayfarer's vision. Privilege, right. These arguments fail for the reasons discussed in the motion for judgment on the pleadings opposition. Defendants in the motion for summary judgment argue that the defamatory statements are true because Wayfarer defendants did not harass or retaliate against Lively. But as detailed above, that argument depends entirely on factual disputes, precluding summary judgment. So too with their argument as to actual malice. This court must determine whether the evidence presented is such that a reasonable jury might find that actual malice had been shown with convincing clarity. As explained in detail above, Baldoni, Heath and Sarowitz knew specific types of conduct that amounted to sexual harassment based on Wayfarer's own policy, knew that Lively complained about such conduct long before the film was edited or marketed, and admitted not just that many of the incidents occurred as Lively described them, but that Lively genuinely believes her claims. Thus, there is ample evidence from which a reasonable jury could find that defendants knew Lively did not fabricate her claims of sexual harassment. This is even more true as to the claim that Lively fabricated her claims in order to gain control of the film's marketing, which defendants knew was untrue at all times given their acknowledgement that Sony had been responsible for the film's marketing plan. As to the assertion that Tag, Abel and Street did nothing proactive but only responded to inbound media inquiries, thereby proving Lively's retaliation claims to be fabricated, a reasonable jury would likely find that defendants were knowingly participants in a proactive media campaign designed to discredit Lively. Accusing Lively of having fabricated claims that defendants knew to be contemporaneously documented and genuinely held is the definition of actual malice. Okay. Defendants are not entitled to claim summary judgment on the conspiracy claim. Lively's conspiracy claim functions as an alternative theory of liability on her non-conspiracy claims. As evident from the underlying claims, Lively has alleged 1. Civil conspiracy to retaliate under Title VII FEHA and the California Labor Code against It Ends With Us movie and Wayfarer. 2. Conspiracy to commit false light as to Wayfarer, Baldoni, Heath, Sarowitz, Nathan, Tag, and Abel. And 3. Conspiracy to commit defamation or defamation per se against Wayfarer, Baldoni, and Heath. The record evidence establishes that the Wayfarer defendants agreed to a common scheme to retaliate against Lively that included placing her in a false light and defaming her. One or more of the Wayfarer defendants acted intentionally and overtly in furtherance of that scheme, and harm resulted. That is all it is required for a jury to conclude that the defendants conspired to commit civil wrongs. Sarowitz is not entitled to summary judgment on the false light or conspiracy claims. Motion for summary judgment's attempt to cast Sarowitz as an aloof financier cannot be squared with the record. Sarowitz is a close confidant and friend of Baldoni and Heath and is Wayfarer's co-chairman and redacted. He was intimately aware of the complaints of the sexual harassment at the time they occurred, visited the set, participated in the promotion of the film, knowingly paid for Wayfarer Studios' public relations and crisis services used to carry out the retaliatory campaign, and personally drafted negative narratives about Lively, redacted. Sarowitz's attempt to minimize his involvement is controverted by his own documents, notwithstanding their limited nature due to a failure to preserve. God, this woman. Wayfarer Party's damages arguments fails. The Wayfarer parties wrongly argue that Lively lacks standing to seek damages for lost profits and royalties from her businesses because she is an indirect shareholder and lost profits are too speculative. Lively does not purport to bring derivative shareholder claims on behalf of the companies, but rather is seeking damages to her own business reputation in connection with her own legal claims. For this same reason, the defendant's authority addressing speculative lost profits is inapposite, but even if they were not, Lively's losses associated with Blake Brown and Betty Boo's are rooted in detailed financial projections prepared by experienced business leaders. I'm getting tired now, based on industry experience and actual sales figures. Conclusion: defendant's motion for summary judgment should be denied, and thank the Lord that is over. Okay, so I think I've voiced a lot of opinions throughout. I don't think that Wayfarer are going to succeed on summary judgment because there are fact issues. So I do think, I mean, obviously, I think it does need to go before a jury, in my opinion. And I think that as much as I take issue with many of the things Lively said in here and the things that we could not see, some of the arguments she makes just purely for actually, this still needs to be decided by a jury. I do think some of those points are well made. Credit where credit is due. Some of the points are well made. It'll be interesting to see the replies now from Wayfarer. I don't love this document. There is a lot of dishonesty in it as well, and a lot of contradiction of itself. But some of the legal arguments are not that bad, especially around the ALA and the CRD. I actually agree with the point. Like, they argued, Wayfarer argued it one way with the motion to dismiss. You cannot say, well, now the agreement is irrelevant because, and I've always said this, it was performed. The contract was performed. The fact that she didn't sign it, to me, is not the big be all and end all. Yes, there is a clause in there that says, it needs to be signed to be executed. However, everyone still performed their functions. Wayfarer got their film. Lively got paid. She did her job acting. My personal opinion of that job is another thing. But Wayfarer, who were the people who, had to make the decision on whether they were satisfied with the job she did, if ultimately accepted her work, the film was released. It did very well financially. So I found their attempt to walk back now and say, well, you didn't sign this agreement, so it's not valid. I can see where they're coming from, but I can also see Lively's arguments of, hold on a minute now, you were happy to rely on this agreement at various points in this litigation and in your own litigation against me. So you cannot now say that this agreement is not relevant because I didn't sign it. I can just see both sides of the argument, which is, that's part of law. How will Wayfarer respond to all of this, though? It'll be interesting. And I'm curious to see what kind of evidence there is for all of the stuff that these women were saying about Baldoni and Heath. She's made all these allegations that Alex Sachs said this, Colleen Hoover did that. Where's the evidence? Let's see it. Because that has to... So, okay. Right, I'm going to leave it there because I need to go and have a drink. And I have a third video, which I'll be doing much later, much later, which will have all of the interesting short letter motions and responses. Oh, and also, please don't forget to like and subscribe and hype the video. It helps my channel out a lot. Right, appreciate you guys. Thank you. Take care.